Ferrari just built the fastest car in Bahrain, and Lewis Hamilton still doesn't fully trust it. Charles Leclerc set a 1-minute 34.273 and shocked the entire paddock. The SF-26 exploded from 0 to 200 kilometers per hour faster than Red Bull. On paper, that sounds like dominance. But here's what nobody showed you. At the end of the straight, the power faded. Clipping. Battery drained before the braking zone. Then on day 3, during a race simulation, Hamilton stopped on track. Thermal shutdown. The hybrid system overheated under sustained load. This is not a small issue. It means Ferrari has built a car with the highest qualifying ceiling on the grid and one of the narrowest operating windows. Explosive, unforgiving, potentially fragile. Stay with me, because what Hamilton felt inside that cockpit during those 3 days reveals far more than a headline lap time. And it could decide whether this is a championship machine or another season of almost. Subscribe now, because this story is bigger than Bahrain testing. Day 1 is where the illusion began. Because on television, Ferrari looked smooth, confident, in control. But inside Hamilton's data traces, there were early warning signs. The SF-26 delivered brutal acceleration out of slow corners. Zero hesitation, instant electric torque. From 0 to 200 kilometers per hour, it was stronger than Red Bull. For the first part of every straight, it looked unbeatable. And that is exactly where the problem was hiding. The deployment map was too aggressive. Energy was being released early, all at once, which meant by the time Hamilton approached the braking zone, the battery state was already dropping, clipping at the end of the straight. The acceleration curve flattened when he still needed power. That creates a psychological effect inside the cockpit. You surge forward, then you feel the push disappear. And at 300 kilometers per hour, that inconsistency matters. But that's not the real issue, because while Leclerc could mask that weakness over 1 lap, Hamilton was already thinking about race distance. And race distance means sustained load. Sustained load means heat. And heat was the silent enemy from the very first day. The side pod packaging on the SF-26 is extremely tight, aerodynamically efficient, thermally unforgiving. During longer stints, temperatures began creeping upward. Not critical yet, but trending in the wrong direction. At the same time, Hamilton reported rear instability in fast corners. The new V-shaped diffuser was sensitive to ride height changes. If a gust of crosswind hit at the wrong moment, the rear stepped slightly, not dramatically, but enough to remove confidence. Leclerc adapts naturally to a loose rear. Hamilton builds rhythm through stability. That difference started shaping the internal narrative immediately. One driver extracting headline pace, the other questioning long-run behavior. And this detail changes everything. Because when a 7-time world champion says the car feels fun but complex, what he really means is this: the potential is huge, but the margin for error is tiny. By the end of day 1, Ferrari had proven something important. They had raw speed, but Hamilton's telemetry was already whispering a warning. Explosive performance, narrow window, and a hybrid system that could not afford mistakes. Day 2 changed the perception completely, because this is when Ferrari showed the world its ceiling. Charles Leclerc delivered that 1-minute 34.273. Fastest of the entire test. The paddock reacted instantly. Suddenly, Ferrari were labeled favorites for pole position. And on pure pace, that label was justified. The front suspension push rod geometry with aggressive anti-dive kept the platform incredibly stable under braking. The car did not pitch forward. It stayed flat. That allowed Leclerc to brake later than anyone else. And when you combine late braking with explosive exit traction, you create a terrifying 1-lap weapon. But most people missed what Hamilton was doing that same afternoon. He was not chasing headlines. He was running longer stints. And that is where the tension inside the SF-26 became clear. The torque delivery from the hybrid system remained abrupt, sharp, immediate, difficult to modulate mid-corner exit. That sudden surge overheated the rear tires. Once the rear surface temperature rises beyond the window, grip falls rapidly. And when grip falls, degradation accelerates. Hamilton was feeling that drop-off. Leclerc could manage it for a qualifying lap. Over 15 laps, it becomes a different story. And here's where things get serious. The aggressive electric deployment that makes the car brilliant at the start of the straight is the same characteristic that stresses the tires over distance. So Ferrari faces a dilemma. Do they smooth the map and lose initial punch? Or keep the punch and risk tire drop-off? That is not a minor calibration tweak. That is a development philosophy choice. Meanwhile, the active aero system was beginning to reveal its own complexity. Onboard footage suggested Ferrari's synchronized front and rear wing stall on the straight to reduce drag more aggressively than rivals. When it worked, the car looked incredibly efficient. When software glitches appeared early in testing, balance shifted mid-corner. Drivers felt it immediately. That issue was largely corrected by the third day. But the fact it existed tells you how ambitious the system is. And ambition always carries risk. By the end of day 2, Ferrari had confirmed something undeniable. They have the fastest peak package. But Hamilton's data was pointing toward a car that demands precision every single lap. No margin for overheating. No margin for poor deployment timing. No margin for wind sensitivity at high speed. And this detail changes the whole picture. Because a car that operates perfectly only inside a narrow window can dominate qualifying. But championships are won in the messy, unpredictable conditions of Sunday. And Sunday was about to expose the real limit of the SF-26. Day 3 is where the illusion cracked. Because up until that point, Ferrari could still control the narrative. Fastest lap, strong braking stability, explosive traction. But race simulation is where truth lives. And during sustained running in midday heat, the SF-26 reached its limit. Lewis Hamilton was deep into a long stint when it happened. Power cut. Car stopped. Ferrari officially described it as a combustion anomaly. But technical analysis pointed toward thermal protection from a hybrid system. The packaging is so extreme, so tightly sculpted that cooling margins are razor thin. Under sustained load, the system overheated. Not during a qualifying blast, during race simulation. And that is the key detail most people overlooked. This was not maximum attack. This was controlled, continuous running, which means real race conditions are the true stress test. Ferrari's response was immediate. Emergency cooling gills opened in the engine cover. Function over form. Temperature stabilized. But aerodynamic efficiency dropped. More drag. Less straight line efficiency, which creates another compromise. The same aggressive packaging that gives Ferrari peak downforce and low drag in ideal conditions is also restricting airflow internally. This is what people mean when they call it a glass rocket. Lethal when everything aligns. Fragile when the environment pushes back. Now look at mileage. 423 laps completed. Decent, but not class-leading. And because Hamilton's full race simulation was interrupted, Ferrari lacks uninterrupted degradation data on the hardest compound. That is a blind spot heading into the first Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Red Bull completed longer, cleaner programs. No visible overheating drama. No emergency bodywork. And this comparison matters, because Ferrari's advantage is sharp. Red Bull's advantage is stable. And stability over a season often beats brilliance. Inside the garage, the dynamic is delicate. Leclerc wants the car aggressive. He thrives on rotation. Hamilton wants progressive torque delivery and rear confidence. That tension will shape development. If Ferrari softens the car to protect race pace, they may sacrifice the very edge that put them on top in testing. If they keep it extreme, Hamilton could struggle in long stints. Fred Vasseur tried to calm expectations. He framed the shutdown as a limit test. Better here than in Melbourne. But he knows reliability cannot be a question mark in a championship fight. Not against a mechanically consistent Red Bull. So where does that leave the SF-26? It leaves it as the most fascinating car on the grid. Best braking stability, explosive acceleration, innovative active aero with synchronized stall potential, but also thermal vulnerability, tire degradation concerns, and a development direction that must satisfy two very different drivers. This is not a safe evolution, it is a calculated gamble. Ferrari chose peak potential over conservative robustness, and that decision will define the season. Because if they widen the operating window just slightly, if they smooth the torque map, if the revised side pods improve cooling without destroying efficiency, they could genuinely challenge for wins immediately. But if the window remains narrow, every hot race becomes a risk. Every safety car restart becomes a temperature spike. Every long stint becomes a question. What no one showed you about Hamilton's Bahrain data was not weakness. It was warning. The speed is there. The confidence is not fully built yet. And in Formula One, confidence is everything. The real question now is simple. Can Ferrari turn this glass rocket into a durable weapon before the lights go out? Or will the first real Sunday expose the same limits Bahrain quietly revealed?